Welcome to Brooklane's Facebook Live event, Teenagers and Drug Use, What You Need to Know. I'm Kurt Miller, Community Relations and Education Manager for Brooklane. Thanks for joining us. If you have any questions for our speakers, please type them into the comments area and I will relay them to the presenters. The program will be posted on Brooklane's YouTube page and available to share with others. Substance use has always been a dangerous threat to our youth, but with the prevalence of prescription drugs in the home, availability to purchase illegal drugs off the street, and increased potency of synthetic opioids like fentanyl, there's never been a more dangerous time for our children. Not only can drug use affect brain development and growth, but can also lead to risky behaviors that can contribute to physical and mental health issues, including unwanted pregnancies, violence, bullying, and even suicide. Today, we have Vicki Sterling and Agent Isaacs with us to share about this topic. Vicki Sterling is an LCSWC and is the Director of Behavioral Health at the Washington County Health Department. She's been with the health department since December of 2015 and started her career in behavioral health in 2001. Vicki graduated from Hagerstown Community College and went on to complete her social work degree at Hood College and the University of Maryland. She serves on the Opioid Operational Command Center Senior Policy Group and oversees numerous opioid-related initiatives throughout Washington County. Since 2019, Vicki's been providing academic detailing to prescribers and pharmacists in Washington County. She also serves as the local addiction authority, which is responsible for jurisdictional planning and oversight of substance use disorder treatment services for Washington County. Agent Isaacs is from Los Angeles, California. After graduating high school, he enlisted in the U.S. Army as a military policeman. Agent Isaacs has been employed with the city of Hagerstown since August 2007 and assigned to the Washington County Narcotics Task Force since October 2015. Vicki and Agent Isaacs, thank you for being with us to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt, and I really appreciate you hosting this evening, because one thing we do know is that educating our youth in our community about the dangers of substance abuse is our best defense against future problems with substance use disorder, especially when we're talking about the opioid epidemic. And tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about data, what we're seeing that statewide, nationally, and locally. We're going to go through some tips on warning signs for the children and also talk about resources. I apologize. I'm trying to, okay. What are you, I'm trying to do the slideshow. I apologize. Okay, so the Opioid Operational Command Center was created out of the governor's state of emergency in 2016. And within that, they collect data. And not all of our data is real-time and accurate. However, they do put out quarterly reports, and they're usually a little bit behind due to the Office of the Medical Examiners actually confirming the cause of death. And if you look at these are from what we call the Opioid Operational Command Center, OOCC quarterly reports. And this is from 2018 to 2021. As you see, the blue is all substances and the red is opioid related. Through September of 2021, we were at 70 opioid related fatalities, and blue would be all substances, 79. So of course, in 2020, we saw an increase mainly due to the opioid pandemic, or to the COVID pandemic. And the isolation, and a lot of people were really struggling with their mental health and accessing treatment services since it was slowed down or shut down. So there wasn't a lot of in-person and there was a lot of disconnect. We also get information from Agent Isaacs' office, which is the Narcotics Task Force. And every year they put together a chart. We monitor this monthly. And this includes every time an officer is called to an opioid or an overdose event. So it's heroin and fentanyl. And these are the numbers from 2022. They were 378 overdoses and 68 deaths. Now, this number may rise once we have more data from the Office of the Medical Examiners. Agent Isaacs, would you like to add anything to this slide?
That is correct, because those numbers can fluctuate because I'm still waiting for autopsy reports to December for some fatal overdoses. So it's just depending on what the autopsy is showing. So
Yeah, and we also sometimes, if they leave the scene or officers don't arrive on, like they aren't called, because we do have overdoses where sometimes agents aren't actually called. People may just get up and walk away, and emergency services really don't have any information on them. So we don't capture all the actual overdoses. We also know that people overdose and it's never reported and 911 is never called. So that may be if someone has Narcan on hand. And then also the hospital is not required to notify law enforcement. So anyone that brings themselves or a friend brings them into the emergency room, they may not report that to the police. So those numbers, and sometimes when the actual data comes from the state, they are a little bit higher. So in Maryland, we have something called the Prescription Drug Monitoring Program, and this was developed in 2018. And basically, this really was created so it would support healthcare providers in safely and effectively prescribing medication. Basically, it is communication between prescribers, which we hadn't had before. So you weren't able to go to your primary care doctor and get a controlled dangerous substance or controlled substance, and then go to your psychiatrist and get a controlled substance. So this kind of monitors what individuals are being prescribed, and they're only controlled substances. And I'd like to use this chart just so we kind of have an idea about the age of prescriptions. So if you see at the bottom, under 15 is about 1,500. That's the blue line. Then we have 15 to 19, which is the brown line. And then 20 to 24 is the gray line. It does go down slightly through 2021, but this just shows that there are youth still being prescribed controlled dangerous substances or controlled substances. And this is Schedule 2 through Schedule 5, and that does include opioids, methadone, sedatives, and Adderall. So we at the health department receive CRISP reports, which is a reporting database. And what we found since April, we've been getting reports. We were in a pilot program. So what we found, and this is a startling statistic, that since April of 2022, there have been 30 overdoses of children between the ages of 1 and 17, with the median age being 14, sorry. And then 22 of these children were female and 8 were male. We've received 14 student assistance referrals, our student assistance program, and 5 of the overdoses were intentional. But when we met with the families and the youth, we found that there was a history of substance use. And so what we're seeing in the county is not only teens that may be experimenting and not knowing what they're getting, but also younger children who are either getting into their parents' medication or their parents' illicit drugs. Agent Isaacs, do you have anything to add to this?
yes, like I said, those numbers are coming down at a younger age because of the influence of what their friends are saying, like, oh, I used this, before, I was fine. But people don't realize that, everybody's different. Their bodies are different. So if somebody used something that was probably like a half a gram, they may be fine. But somebody on the other side could try it and then they end up, overdosing. So, it's just a lot of peer pressure is included in that. And also in today's music, it's all about, taking lean and getting drunk, getting high. That's a lot of stuff is out there that's influencing these kids to do this stuff.
And also, I think one of the things that we've heard children say is that it's a prescription. Like, it was prescribed to my friend, so it should be safe. And Washington Goes Purple really has those conversations. We need to start talking to our children to realize that that wasn't prescribed to them, and they should never take any kind of medication that was prescribed. Because as Agent Isaacs can tell you, that it may not have come from a pharmacy. That there's a lot of illicit drugs that look like a pill that may have come, that they think comes from a pharmacy, but you really don't know where it's coming from.
Yes, that is correct, because we're starting to see a lot of pills coming from the Baltimore area that looks like, Percocets, oxycodones, or any other pills, and it's stamped color and everything, and turn out those are all fake pills, and they're nothing but fentanyl and other analogs of fentanyl.
So when we looked at risk factors, there's just some things to keep in mind that women who struggle with opioid abuse are 86% more likely to become pregnant compared to 56% of all pregnancies. So when we look at this, we look at age of exposure, which age of exposure is a huge risk factor when we talk about substance use and becoming dependent on a substance. Children and teens hospitalized for opioid poisoning tripled between 1997 and 2012, and that's a 205% increase. Most of the overdose patients were teens, but a large increase were poisoning among toddlers and preschoolers. And I know we're kind of talking about two sets of issues, but I think it's important for all families to know that really keeping the medication locked up, even if you have a teen in the house or a younger child in the house, just to be safe. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go through the presentation, because I think it's really important that we touch on both issues. And women between 14 and 22% of women nationwide fill an opioid medication prescription during pregnancy. And the teen death rate from drug overdoses had been declining since 2007, and it reversed in 2015 when nationwide 772 teens between the ages of 15 and 19 died. And that's really when we saw the opioid epidemic really kick up and rear its head. So this is from JAMA-Net. There was a study done that looked at adolescents and youth. To get my it showed they studied about 9,000 children under the age of 20, and what they found that most of them were male. 81% of the adolescents were adolescents, and 6% were ages 4 or up age 0 to 4, and these were individuals who experienced an opioid poisoning. The young mothers of the children were prescribed opioids were markedly increased. So the children of the mothers who had been prescribed opioids were at a higher risk for an overdose. And when we look at the data, it shows that drug use among adolescents really hasn't increased. But what is happening is the deaths are increasing because the drugs are becoming more dangerous and because they're becoming stronger. And I think that's really what Agent Isaacs was saying, is that you don't know what's in the drugs and you're seeing the fentanyl analogs. So other data, this was like an added slide at the last minute, and I knew Agent Isaacs would really like this. We're going to talk a little bit about social media and actual emojis, but Game Quitters was a website I found. It really talks about gaming addiction, but it also had some information about substance use among youth, and this was from the CDC. So about half of the 9th to 12th graders of students have used marijuana. 20% of 12th graders have access to prescription drugs without a prescription. That's where we talk about that, really locking up the medication and having the conversations with your youth, even in getting rid of and disposing of unused medications properly. By 12th grade, about 2/3 of students have tried alcohol. Around 40% of 9th graders and 12th grade students have smoked cigarettes. And then one study in UK found, and I thought this was extremely interesting, that 1 in 4 young people aged 16 to 24 had seen illegal drug advertised on social media. 56% saw it advertised on Snapchat, 55 on Instagram, and 47 on Facebook. Those are pretty high numbers. And when you look at the influence that social media has on our kids today, that's pretty significant.
Yep.
You have anything
Also
to
want to add too, now they're using the gaming system platforms because those chat rooms are not monitored. So we know that some people are actually using like the games from PlayStation, Xbox, and they're getting their drugs from their drug dealers by going to those platforms.
That's really good information, especially since I'm sure, I mean, my kids did it. They're up all hours of the night. As a parent, you really can't stay up and monitor everything. So that is really good to know. So this was one thing that I know there was a news commentary on this, but just monitoring their emojis that they use. And these are just some examples. And I don't know if Agent Isaac wants to add to that, but I just found this interesting when I saw the article.
Never seen those before.
What?
I said, we've never seen those before.
We're gonna have to send you that website.
Yep.
So most commonly used substances among teens are nicotine vaping, which we know is a huge issue among our teens, and then the cannabis and cannabis vaping. In the articles that I've read, the actual cannabis or the nicotine vaping and the cannabis vaping on the studies basically have the same percentage of the kids using. It's about 20% of the kids report using within the last 6 months nicotine or cannabis. And then alcohol, Washington County does have a pretty high prevalence of alcohol use. And then illicit drugs other than marijuana, and of course, use of narcotics other than heroin. That includes Vicodin, your Oxycontin, and Percocet. So behavioral warning signs, these are things that you're going to want to look for, or if you have a suspicion. Avoiding eye contact, that could be because of the effects of the drugs. They may not be able to make eye contact with you. That pupils are dilated. Ignoring or breaking curfew. They're either forgetful, as we know, substances usually decrease inhibitions. So there's a little bit of lack of consequence or thinking it through. Acting irresponsibly if they're doing things that they never would do before. Frequently asking for money, that would be to buy drugs. Stealing, locking your bedroom doors, secretive calls. And secretive calls is what made me think of the emoji article that I saw on the news. Isolating from others, damaging relationships with family and friends. Making excuses or outright lying. Withdrawing from classroom participation, slipping grades, resisting discipline or feedback, missing school or work, losing interest in hobbies or activities, and abandoning longtime friends. So really just looking at the behavior and if there's drastic changes, which I know sometimes that's kind of difficult because they're teens and their behavior or their mood changes pretty rapidly when they're going through things emotionally. But these are all things to look for. And then we're going to give resources that if you have questions that you could reach out and help. Do you have anything to add, Agent Isaacs?
One thing I also want to add to that is people selling off their possessions. When you start seeing things being, not in their rooms or in their house anymore, that's a good indicator that, like, why is my stuff missing? Where is it at? jewelry is missing out of the parents' jewelry box, stuff like that, because they're usually giving it to these drug dealers or taken down to the pawn shop to sell to get their drugs. So that's a good thing to sign, or another sign to look for is missing items in the house. And I just think that's about it.
So now we have the physical warning signs. Poor hygiene, a change in appearance. Of course, the eyes again, glazed or bloodshot. Frequently runny nose or nosebleeds, and that may be from snorting substances. Paranoia, irritability, or fidgeting. Definitely a change in that. Change in moods or attitudes. Difficulty staying on task or staying focused. Small track marks or marks on arms or legs, or wears long sleeves in warm weather. Pupils, again, the eyes, if they're large or if they're smaller. Sweaty palms or shaking hands, sores on the mouth, headaches, puffy or swollen face, tired, extreme hyperactivity, and rapid weight loss or gain. Do you have anything else to add, Agent?
Yes, also look for their dental health. If you see like their teeth are starting to erode, get yellow and decay and stuff like that, that's usually a good sign that they're smoking methamphetamine. Also, the small track marks, they're going beyond the arms and legs now. Look at their feet. They're starting to say, hey, shoot up in your feet or in your neck or somewhere that parents won't see. So those are a good indicators to look at their feet.
And
because
also,
we talked to numerous. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say marks, sort of breakouts that are like on their face or arms, sort of like scabs, sort of pick marks.
Yep.
So what we
Especially,
know,
like I say, the main one is look at the feet.
So we know that substances can be administered in multiple ways: swallowed, inhale, absorbed through skin, also injected. It has a poisonous effect, the lungs, the heart, the central nervous system, gastrointestinal tract and kidneys, and of course, the brain. When someone suffers from an opioid overdose, they lack oxygen to the brain and the body shuts down. Also, and we really didn't talk about it, but inhalants, and Agent, I don't know, Agent, that because I haven't heard, but if inhalants are still, if they're coming back, because sometimes you find like when one thing isn't available, they sort of move on to the next. But I know even the stores are selling that.
Yeah, it's a very small percentage. Rarely do we get anyone that says, hey, these kids are huffing and they're going to Home Depot, Walmart to buy aerosol cans and stuff like that. I mean, they could get a whole gamut of things at the supermarket at Walmart. So it's, like I said, it's a very low number with inhalants.
So when we look at lasting physical effects of an overdose on children, one of the things, and this is for not just the older kids, but the younger kids, is acute intoxication from THC. Its most common form when combined with food. Stronger prolonged effects on children, higher risk on children due to their weight and size, required hospitalization due to toxic amounts that are ingested. And there really is no unknown long-term effect. And again, we're talking about youth, younger children who may get into a parent's marijuana, maybe it's medicinal, eat a gummy, or the oil from the vape pens. It's still very dangerous. And even for the older kids, their brain's still developing. So there really is no telling what long-term effect it can have on youth if they take large quantities. And then neonatal exposure for infants is they're born with neonatal or opioid withdrawal or neonatal abstinence syndrome. They have longer hospital stays, lower birth rate, trouble breathing and eating. Long-term effects could be learning disabilities or behavioral problems. And then long-term effects for opioids, learning disabilities, behavioral problems, cognitive problems, large and fine motor delays. This is from the National Library of Medicine Children's Hospital. One of the other things that we have to be very careful about is nicotine solution intoxication. So even with the vape pens and smaller children, you have to be careful that they don't get into the juice, and it can cause nausea, vomiting, seizures, heartbeat faster, jittery, kind of unsteady. And then, of course, the illicit drugs, slower breathing, slowed pulse. And we have had younger children accidentally overdose on synthetic drugs or opioids that they got into from their parents. So just some facts about teens and their risk factors. Teens are at a higher risk due to genetics. So it really depends on the age that they start using and socioeconomic circumstances and other factors. So when we look at prevention programs, it's really important to start young, having these conversations. And when we look at sort of what decreases their risk, one is delay of onset of use, because their brains are still developing. And two, really having those conversations with them so they have the education to know what substance use is. Casual drug use can lead to abuse and addiction, so causing health issues, financial issues, and problem and legal trouble. Like we all know, kids are going to experiment, but it's really important to have these conversations so they know the dangers, and we can prolong use as long as we can, because we know kids that start younger are at higher risk for becoming dependent later in life. Today's marijuana is much stronger than it was in the past, making it dangerous. And yes, it is addictive. And when we look at sort of, and our Agent Isaacs can speak to this, is that marijuana, one, is very accessible, especially with Delta 8 and Delta 9 that are sold in the smoke shops. And now we're coming upon legalization of marijuana in July. So it's really going to be important to have those conversations with your youth. Do you want to add anything about marijuana?
Yes. We also have to be careful too, because we know that some of these drug dealers are lacing marijuana with fentanyl, unbeknownst to the user. It's because they're trying to get them to spend more money, because marijuana is much cheaper than getting heroin and cocaine and stuff like that. So we're going to start seeing a lot of overdoses here with, I just smoke marijuana. Well, it could also have fentanyl in it. And like I said, a lot of this stuff is coming from some of these drug dealers who is trying to make a quick buck. And a lot of people who get their marijuana thinking these are legit people, but turn around, they're in fact have fentanyl laced with marijuana. So you definitely have to be careful.
So many teens with addiction also have a co-occurring mental health disorder. So it's really important to also talk to your kids and educate yourself about mental health, depression, anxiety, and get them the extra support that they need. So we do know that teenagers' brains are more susceptible to addiction because it's still developing. Like I said, they're still young and their brains are still developing, so it puts them at a higher risk. Addiction, whether a teen or it's a teenager or an adult, it is a disease. It is definitely not a moral failing. So we need to focus on the behavior and not on the person. We really need to stop stigma. Many people in the United States and across the world struggle with addiction and struggle with mental health disorder. So it's important to remember that everybody has can experience this, and that it isn't a moral failing, it isn't a choice. So treating them with respect and dignity and supporting them and getting their help that they need is extremely important. As a parent and a caregiver, you have to remind yourself, you did not cause this, you cannot control it, and it cannot be cured. Addiction can, however, be managed over the course of a lifetime, just like any other chronic disease like diabetes or hypertension. The best prevention is to talk to your kids. I can't stress this enough, to have open, honest conversations. Our kids are having open, honest conversations with themselves, with each other, which aren't always accurate or very educated. So as a parent, it's so important that you equip yourself with the information you need to have these conversations with your children, instead of them having it with each other. So spending time with them, making clear what your expectations are, what the rules are, what the consequences are, and check in regularly to see how they're doing. We know that being a teen is not easy, or an adolescent is not an easy feat, and it's always a struggle. I definitely would not want to go back to that time in my life, especially today, where the kids seem to have so much extra pressure with social media and everything else, and coming out of the pandemic. So really supporting them and having those conversations. Vaping, whether it's nicotine or THC, have tremendously increased among teens, and it's not harmless. There's a lot of dangers in it. They don't know what's in the vape. I can't tell you how many reports we've got of youth hitting a pen, thinking it was nothing, and ending up in the emergency room for elevated heart rate or whatever it may be. Maybe it was their first time using, but again, like Agent Isaac said, there's so much peer pressure and wanting to fit in and thinking it's harmless, and you hit a pen once and you're on your way in an ambulance to the hospital. Do you want to say more about that, Agent?
Yeah, also that we could cover too is their use, or these vape pens also have dangerous metal inside these pens, and you're ingesting that metal inside your system, and that's going to cause some long-term health down the line, because this stuff is coming over from other countries, and there's no sterilization of their equipment or anything. So we did find some that have some toxic metals inside some cartridges. So, you know, like, people got to be aware that just because someone's vaping and you see no short-term health effects, but in the long term, you know, those metals will eventually get you. So just got to be careful with those THC or the vape pens.
Yeah, and at the health department, we do have a lot of vape information because we know it's such an issue among our children. And I think, you know, vaping is just going to be like cigarette use. We're going to find out that it is dangerous. And there hasn't been a lot of education around it in the community. But through our smoking and our tobacco cessation program and our prevention program, the health department does have a lot of information and resources. And we'll go through that in a little while. But treatment works. People do overcome substance use disorder, and it restores lives. So there is hope. So just so everyone knows, we had talked about a little bit about safe storage. I think it's so important that you get rid of your unwanted medication. You know, it doesn't really matter who you are, but if you're not using it, it could be anybody. It could be a plumber that comes in your house to work in your bathroom. They could check your medicine cabinet and take medication that you had in there. It could be your teens having a party and a friend goes in there and uses whatever may be in the cabinet. So it's really important to get rid of what you have that you're not using. Lock boxes or bags, we have them at the health department. So if you are prescribed a controlled substance, you can come to the health department, and we do have lock boxes or lock bags. We do have community drug disposal events. And you can go to the Washington County Health Department's Facebook page or website, and we post them. And we usually do a good bit of advertising around that. And there are national take back days. The next one would be April. And then we have drop boxes throughout the county. Recently, we were able to get drug disposal boxes in the private pharmacies throughout the county. So there's one at the Clear Spring Pharmacy, Reed's Pharmacy, Sharpsburg, Smithsburg, Williamsport. And then, of course, Hagerstown City Police Department has one, Hancock Police Department, the State Police, Smithsburg, and the Washington County Sheriff's Office. So anytime you're not you're done with your medication, you want to take it to one of those locations. One of the other things that's very important is to be trained in Narcan use. So that is the medication that reverses an opioid overdose. And anyone can be trained. We do it for agencies, organizations, one-on-one, families, and even children, unfortunately, because some of our children have parents that use, and we've trained them and they've actually saved their parents' life. So when we go through our resources and information at the end, if you're interested in being trained in Narcan, we definitely would happy to do any kind of training for your agency, organization, your family, or whoever, because we know that people don't recover if they're not living. So I'm going to let Agent Isaacs go over this because this is his baby and he's just amazing and we're so excited about this.
This trailer, like I said, is awesome. It mocked a bedroom and part of the bathroom of your house. We have stuff in there that are hidden compartments where stuff that could be brought off the internet through Amazon or other websites where they'll show you or they'll show the people who purchase your stuff where you can hide drugs, contrabands, weapons, anything, and stuff that you would never even think about. And, when we're doing search warrants, we look at everything and you'd be amazed what we come across with just innocent looking products. Everyday Coke bottles, plastic water bottles, cigarette lighters, you name it, they're there. So if you ever see the trailer, you'll be amazed. So
the trailer will be at the Washington County Library February 9th, I believe it is. And there's a parent workshop. Also, if you have a community event and you would want the trailer there, we can definitely bring it out. Agent Isaacs is there and can talk to parents. We don't let youth go through the trailer. It's only for parents. But we have resources and information and it really is awesome. And I think it's new this year. It's through Washington Goes Purple. We've named it the SAFE trailer. So substance abuse or substance awareness for family education. So hopefully, parents can go through there and learn some things and hopefully find some warning signs, even if it's vaping or smoking a cigarette, really being able to identify things before they happen and be proactive. So resources, we're really excited. We have a parent support group on Sundays at 2 p.m. Because we figured, in the evening, it's so hard. Parents are busy, they're fixing dinner and everything else. And this is really focused on raising healthy teens that are free from alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. So if you want more information, my contact information is in the at the end of the presentation. You can also call the health department, and that number's there too for more information, but it's an open group, anybody can join. And then we also have started the Adolescent Clubhouse, and this is an after-school program that's free of charge. It provides education for youth from 11 to 17 regarding healthy lifestyles and accessing resources to help them live a substance-free lifestyle. Even if they are using, there are resources for care coordination. They help families with housing. I'm really excited. They've just hired a new peer support specialist that focus on youth. So it's someone who has lived experience and can relate to the youth that are there. We've also started a teen health advisory council. These youth work together in 3 different domains: healthy lifestyles, substance use and mental health awareness, and environmental health. And they meet regularly. They do community projects, but then they also do whichever kind of subcommittee the youth decide to choose, say, be healthy lifestyles or the substance use and mental health. They do special projects under whatever topic that is. And then we have our student assistance program, which is SAP, and referrals for that usually come from the school board. However, anybody can make a referral to SAP. And basically what we do is we have a licensed clinician provide a in-depth assessment and make a determination if they need education or if they actually need treatment. And we do have numerous treatment providers through the community that we work with that take Medicaid, and then we'll work with them to find someone that takes private insurance also. So any questions? That's a lot of information.
So far, we have not had any questions come in the comments area, but if we can just still hold for a moment, just
Oh,
in case
absolutely.
somebody does have something.
I'm going to just switch to put my contact information up there,
Perfect.
just so if people have information, they can email me or would like flyers for any of the resources for that. And we definitely can hang on for any questions that we have.
Well, I'm not seeing anyone typing or questions coming in. So I do want to thank you both very much for the information that you've shared. I think it's certainly very valuable and will certainly make the information that will be on the YouTube channel good for those that can reference it later on.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad you had us, because we know that, you know, this is really our first line of defense in the opioid epidemic, and even just our future with our kids.
Oh, absolutely. I'm thinking that, you know, not perhaps the exact same topic, but I'm hoping that maybe it's something that we can work together on for some kind of program in the future. I think that would be good. Maybe something even for September as part of Washington Goes Purple or something like that, as an alternative way to get information out to people.
That would be great. And even thinking about having some of our youth ambassadors that we have that work with Washington Goes Purple.
Oh, that would be good. That sounds exciting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. We do appreciate it. And I hope you have a good rest of the evening.